Uh, I assume that he doesn't need any introduction. He has been a former member of the parliament in the 13th Lok Sabha. In the recent controversy about evolution, he took a very strong, unequivocal stand in favor of science and evolution. So I welcome Mr. Pradeep Rawat here and request him to take the stage.
व्हिडिओ रेकॉर्डिंग आहे ना
ह्याला पण स्पीकर या स्पीकरवर पण
मी इथं बोलू का तिथं बोलू
कसं तुम्हाला
हॅलो 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 तर मराठी किती लोकांना येत नाही सगळ्यांना येतं पण एक दोन हात वरती गेले तर इट्स फाईन हो नाही मी इंग्लिश फक्त मला पाहायचं होतं म्हणलं इथं एकंदरीत किती विद्यार्थी आहेत सुरू करायचं फ्रेंड्स organic evolution and as you are all engineers I'm going to explain it as a design question. In fact, Darwin's greatest contribution to the history of ideas is about the biodesigns. But this revolution did not include life. Life remained a black box, and due to that, science had a split personality. That the non-living world could be explained, could be investigated through scientific enterprise, but when it came to living things, the living organisms, those organisms had a very complicated, they have a complex organization. How to explain the complex organization of the organism, and then to the functionality of this kind of organization. It was truly difficult because of many things. there was little understanding about the life forms. Yes, it's true that in the earlier centuries, like Linnaeus, who first made a classification of all the living organisms, that was a great step. In the earlier century, there were some advances. The most important of them was about how old is the earth. So geology gradually developed, particularly in the Western society. People thought the age of the earth is as the Bible has said. There was one cleric who said that it's 6,000 years, Asher. And so now you have to explain life according to the word, because people thought that the main job is to connect the word of God to the work of God, to strengthen the literal interpretation of a religious book. But gradually, a revolution doesn't stop. The scientific age had already started. And there was a cultural milieu in which people had started questioning things. And it first started before biology. It started in geology. And unless, in the modern terms too, if we don't understand geology, we will not understand biology. It is a fact. The earth could be explained in the earlier times by the catastrophes described in the Bible. But now there were people who were investigating. They found out that earth is much, much older. And the tallest among those geologists was Lyell. Another thing happened, that during those 17th and 18th centuries, the Europeans had reached almost all the continents and mostly many, many islands. So this age of exploration brought back to that society much more information about many, many different kinds of animals, plants. And they were described, the specimens were brought back, studied. Before Darwin, some fossils too were found. In fact, Darwin himself found fossils. If you look at this background, people were trying to understand. They had classified, and while doing classification, these people, they had, how did they classify? They classified various clusters which were more, in a way, analog. What we can describe is, there could be seen that there is an affinity, a closeness. And so Linnaeus too had classified human beings in the cluster of the great apes. But everybody thought that each species is a different entity. So there were boxes within the boxes, and they must have existed as they are. Many people had started questioning this prevalent interpretation that the various life forms, they are static and they have existed in the same way since the beginning. Some people had started speculating because the sources like fossils, the similarities between various life forms, that suggested that there has to be some kinship amongst the various life forms. So evolution was in air, as they say. But how life has evolved, nobody could guess about it. Yes, some people did, like Lamarck, he said that there are adaptations because people had studied not only life forms, their perfect match to their environment, that was studied. And he thought that these adaptations have come because of the environment in which these life forms live. So when Darwin started on his historic journey, what did he have? A very curious mind. He was well read. He had Lyell's geology with him. And what he found was, he noted in his diary. Why I am telling you? Because what I wish to do today is not only tell about evolution, that you can get in Jaikar Library. There are so many books, and I can recommend some good books to you. I am not here in a brief, some 45 minutes to explain the evolutionary mechanism or the evolutionary history. But to tell you this, that what is the scientific method which we use? This method. He kept notebooks. These notebooks are very important. You go on darwin.org and each and every word written by Darwin is there. So you can understand how a scientist works. He did not start with big theories. He had some hunch. There are some notations in the diary. But he kept on observing, trying to understand and connect things. Because it was a challenging job. A century earlier, another clergy in England, Paley, had written a long argument about the biological life forms. And he had argued that these life forms he had described in detail about the eye, about the various organs, the various systems. He had described many species. And ultimately, he had summarized that this kind of complex organization, the form and function, the design, it cannot exist without a designer. So that is known as argument from design. Then he has given an example that if you go in a remote place, and there you find a watch, then he described the intricacies of the watch. And asked the question, is there any doubt if there is a watch, there is a watchmaker? And this is Darwin's answer to him in the words of Richard Dawkins. Yes, there is a watch. There is design. The blind watchmaker. And what is this blind watchmaker? That's about Darwin's theory. That such kind of intricate designs which we find in various kind of life forms, they can come into existence without a creator, just by natural process. This is what Darwin has explained. And his whole theory is based on three facts which you also can observe. That all life forms have offsprings. That is replication. Offsprings are not identical. They are not clones. There is variation. And the offsprings during their lifetime, not all are successful in reproducing, or the same number of offsprings, so there is a differential. And this is what is the fact of selection. The struggle of life, everybody has to strive because of those slight variations. Some variations are beneficial, some are not. To survive and to reproduce is a big challenge in nature, in wild. And so, in a way, nature provides that kind of selective force. But all this happens without any plan, purpose, just because these three things which happen, which are not interdependent or interrelated, but because of these three independent facts, what we get is the consequences of these three facts is that we get evolution. It is in a very simple way I am trying to explain. But for that, it's a very beautiful theory. You must read some good books which are for the popular understanding. I will recommend them to you. And we see that what is it? So when the simplest cell too when it multiplies, first we have to understand, by definition, a biocell is basically chemical. It becomes a biochemistry because of essentially two aspects. One is the ability to extract energy from outside and use it for oneself. And the second is the ability to replicate. We are very familiar with the DNA world, which is now there. We are all part of that DNA world. And we know that there was, in distant past, something like an RNA world, which is a much simpler form. And there has to be a much, much simpler kind of abilities at the origin of life. Science doesn't know the definite answer, though many people are working on that, how life originated. But we definitely know once life had a kickstart, we can explain not only the present diversity of life, but we can now explain, because of the theory of evolution, the whole evolutionary lineage, or what we call as the history of life. This can be explained. That is the greatest beauty. And therefore, when we say theory, people think that evolutionary theory is some kind of, like we say, I have a theory about. We use that word so casually. But theory of evolution is in the same category like theory of gravity or the theory of germs. They are considered in science as facts and when we find people opposing this most beautiful understanding of from where we have come, including the humans, why there is an opposition? I can understand those who are deeply religious. They believe that what is written in their holy books, they take the literal meaning of those books and they deny everything else. Yes, there are flat earth societies in US. I know 50% of the US population is proactively anti-evolutionist. We don't have a survey for India, but I will not be surprised. Not because of a proactive opposition, but the ignorance. We are not scientifically literate people. We do not have that curiosity to know about ourselves from where we have come. Unless we know from where we have come, how can we decide where we want to go? Science gives us what is. Unless we understand what is, how can we decide what ought to be? It's a big responsibility that we have a scientific understanding of the material world, which is us, everything. And and science has given us that great ability through which we can understand. Earlier, people looked at things, oh, it's a miracle. Full stop. Who must be the originator of this miracle? God. Is it an answer? It is not an answer. But what is science is? Science is about looking at the same phenomena not as a miracle but as a mystery to be solved, a puzzle to be solved. That is the business of science. When we say we are doing science, that is what we are doing. And exactly that's the path which has led us to this 21st century. I am going to go to that subject later. But here I want to emphasize is that what Darwin did was complete this scientific revolution. He brought the domain of biological world to science. So now biological existence could be explained through natural processes, natural laws. And then we can say that the Copernican revolution and the Darwinian revolution both completed the scientific revolution. Now we have that understanding. Earlier, Darwin did build his theory on evidence. His first important evidence was from artificial selection. Then he had an enormous data of plants and animals, their classification, their affinities, and how they are connected. Then to explain change through time, because evolution is change through time. So fossils could be explained as life changing through time. So this he had. But after Darwin, now it's more than 150 years. And when it was 150 years, in 2009, there were great celebrations all over the world, not of the religious type, but the various universities and research institutes took up more projects to explore in various kind of biological disciplines. That time, a science journalist, Natalie Angier, she wrote an article in New York Times. Darwin is dead. Long live Darwin. Now this is based on what they say in England. When the king dies, that particular king dies. But the kingship is eternal. It goes on. In science, we do not have that cult head, some guru hai koi. It's not like that. We don't worship Darwin or Newton or Einstein or anybody. Their word is not the last word. In science, it's nothing like that. They can inspire us. But in science, there is no such authority. There is only one authority, that is evidence. Science is fact-based. And therefore, this is a great achievement of this field. Now, why do, as I said, there are some people, religious people who oppose it. But there is one important reason where we have to think about it, because maybe we also may think on those lines. If you take the human evolution, we also started as explained by evolution, that we started our journey in East Africa, the grasslands. and the modern human beings, we may go back some 2 lakh years, but there were many other hominins. We have the fossils, so we can. We have a rich family. Earlier, only chimpanzees, humans, gorillas, bonobos, orangutans, that's all. But now, those extinct hominins, if we look at the whole rich family, we have a better understanding from where we started. Neanderthals, they went extinct some 30,000 years ago. And the earlier hominins, they traveled to Europe, as far as Russia, Indonesia. But take this specimen, the Homo sapiens. We are the wise one, as it describes. If you look at all other life forms, the adaptations they make with their environment, it is through the biological means. So it takes thousands, lakhs, millions of years to bring about those adaptations. They become much more fine-tuned. They respond much better. The survival rates can increase. But with humans, something else happened. Because they had some spatial advantages. Language, separate thumb. Very simple. But look at the others. Our cousins, they cannot throw a stone like we can throw. Ask a gorilla to do it. It's not possible. And as the wise concerns, our ability to think with the help of language, to express ourselves. And because of that ability, we are a tool-making animal. Yes, there are a few others, some birds, some animals, who make elementary tools. But if you look at the human survival, it's only because humans could adapt to their environments in historical times, not in biological times. Try to understand. An adaptation which takes millions of years, and historical time means thousands of years, 10,000, 5,000, 2,000. I am talking about that is historical times. So we can bring those adaptations, clothes, maybe the stone tools, and we could survive everywhere, in the desert, in the savannas, in the Ice Age Europe. We went everywhere. If you look at the earliest migration of the Homo sapiens, they have spread everywhere. They went to America, they migrated because there was a bridge at the northernmost tip. So people could migrate, some maybe 12,000 to 5,000 years, to 15,000 years ago. They migrated to Americas. Now Jarvas, our Andaman, they have come here 50,000 years ago. Because of genetic markers, we can know that. What I am trying to tell is that humans survived because they could create adaptations in historical times. And because of their ability of invention and creation, they had created that crude stone tool, the bow and arrow, everything. If you look at all the gadgets, the simplest gadgets which our ancestors created, and look at our cell phones and our aeroplanes, and look at everything, because we are living in a technology age. There was somebody has written that technology as luxury. No, it is our adaptive tool. We cannot survive without technologies. So kindly somebody should make a change. It is not a luxury. It is because of our ability to use technology we have survived. Look at our ancestors, what they achieved. They were just like any other ape. They spread all over the world. They created civilizations. See the ability of humans before the scientific revolution, which is a very recent phenomena. They domesticated animals and plants. It's a huge achievement. They didn't know Darwin. They were not aware what is the material of inheritance, what is the mechanism of inheritance. But through selective breeding, they started farming. Artificial selection is what they did. So to domesticate animals for our own use, to domesticate plants for our own use, this is what they achieved. And this has created a mindset in the human beings. That unless there is a creator, there cannot be any creation. If there is a design, there has to be a designer. So it's not only some kind of religious resistance. As a very great scientist, Sin Carroll has said, the resistance to evolution comes not from the scientific view. It is a cultural issue. And therefore, unless we grow up in that sense, and we try to understand why it is that we don't oppose anything else, the same science, the same scientific methodology is created all the disciplines and all the language and all the technologies. We don't resist them. But when it comes to humans, why we are uncomfortable? For us, that feeling like we had before Copernicus, the heliocentric world, that the earth is the center of the whole universe. It's the same thing now, that the human, because in some ways we have some special abilities, we are not unique. What is the message of evolution? That these life forms, they do not evolve, ultimately to evolve into human beings. Vehicle of evolution. We are just a small and the youngest species on one of the frail branch of this tree of evolution. One of them, one of the millions. So this understanding about ourselves, that who we are, it creates a humbleness in us. Look at DNA. We all know about it, something about it. We use DNA in courts to prove paternity. We use DNA in the courts to prove somebody is criminal as evidence. What is that evidence? that unique variation which he has. This molecular biology has given us the ultimate unshakable proof of evolution. That the whole life, from virus, bacteria, all the kingdoms of life, any life form on this earth, we have a unity. Because it is the same genetic material. Not only that, the proteins which we use, the 20 amino acids we use, they are the same. The pathways, the processes through which our bodies work, they are the same. Every day we get a new news. Just a day before there was a news that experiments are going on to farm human hearts in pigs by using gene editing and stem cell therapy. Can we imagine? Why can we do this in a pig? Because we are related to the pig. Why all the biomedical research is done on mouse, on rabbits, on monkeys, and then we have clinical trials on humans. Why is it possible? Because we are related. We are all mammals. You must read a beautiful book, Your Inner Fish, by Neil Shubin. A fantastic book, that this body, particularly your engineers, basically it is a fish body. If you go, there are wonderful films on embryology. So how gradually the embryo goes through all the various stages of evolution. So we have a tail in our embryo. There are many things we do not know about that. But when our ancestors were fish, we are carrying some basic designs. What is the difference between nature's ability to design and human engineer's ability to design? A human engineer can start de novo from on a clean slate. He can start with a drawing, with a conception. Nature doesn't have that freedom. Nature has to tinker. So many things which have happened in the human body, I am not going to reveal what's in that book. It's so beautiful. Then you will understand the fish in yourself. And all those other, our deep ancestors. I will just show you one more book, The Joy of Science, by Richard Lockshin. This is the only book which I know which teaches scientific methodology. And he uses evolutionary biology as an example. Because basically many times it's physics, the examples of physics, but nobody uses evolution as an example to explain scientific methodology. So I think it must be in Jaikar. If it's not there, contact me. I will get you a free copy. There are ways. Soft copy. That is also human ingenuity. And I will like to read you. See, sometimes we say that science is very dry. But You must be knowing Dawkins. Have you heard about him? Read his books? Anything else? Any other book? You know? Yes. Anything else? So, Selfish Gene was his first book. Read all his books. His next book is Blind Watchmaker. And many. And in 2009 he came out with the book, The Greatest Show on Earth. There are two books you must read, which came out in 2009. One is by Dawkins, The Greatest Show on Earth, and another one is Why Evolution is True by Professor Jerry Cohen. Just in December, we had invited him in ICER to give a lecture. That lecture is on YouTube. And I think he will best explain what evolution is. So the title of that book was, science can be so poetic. We think that science has taken away that romantic thrill. But science is a creative force. Evolution is a creative force, where mutation and selection, one is random, one is non-random, they combine to create the diversity of life forms in this world. So, natural selection is a great creative force. And this is described by a beautiful metaphor by Dawkins. The river of my title is a river of DNA. And it flows through time, not space. It is a river of information, not a river of bones and tissues. A river of abstract instructions for building bodies, not a river of solid bodies themselves. The information passes through bodies and affects them, but it is not affected by them on its way through. The river is not only uninfluenced by the experiences and achievements of the successive bodies through which it flows, it is also uninfluenced by a potential source of contamination. This is kind of a river he's trying to explain. Then it goes on and on. Then comes our river. The river of human genes joins with the river of chimpanzee genes at about the same time as the river of gorilla genes does. And some 7 million years ago, a few million years farther back, our shared African ape river is joined by the stream of orangutan genes. Farther back still, we are joined by river of gibbon genes, a river that splits downstream into a number of separate species of gibbon and simang. As we push on backward in time, our genetic rivers unite with rivers destined, if followed forward again, to branch into the old world monkeys and the new world monkeys, because they are still there. We have to understand this basic idea that today's monkeys, today's gorillas and chimpanzees and us, so we have not evolved from each other. Our ancestors are same. We have to understand that people have that ideas. I know there are many sites, what we call as FAQs, frequently asked questions, particularly about evolution. Most of these questions come from religious persuasion, but there are many times very common sense objections also. People do not understand, because the theory of evolution is in a way counterintuitive. So we must realize what it is. So I think the time is up. 5 minutes. So I will sum up. What I wanted to tell you today is not the details of a scientific theory. For that you can go have a look. If you want to read a good textbook on evolution, there are many textbooks, but the best I will suggest you is Douglas Fukuyama's textbook on evolution. That is the best. And as I talked about this, there is one beautiful book by Dawkins himself, The Ancestor's Tale. So a human being starts a journey backwards. It's such a beautiful journey. So take that trick. We have to take some mental tricks too to understand ourselves. So today, it's a science day. We have to understand that at one level, we are all techno-savvy. In fact, we are dependent on the products of science. See all the computers here, all the simulations, or whatever courses you study. But have we accepted the scientific worldview? Science can create a smartphone, but does science or do our institutions really throw light on science in a way where we can judge our values? Do we do that? These are the few things I wanted to say. I will take a few minutes. See, if we have wrong notions, we have to pay a heavy price. We know about the history of racism. Ultimately, that deep history had a horrible end in Nazi Germany's Holocaust. This racism was prior to Darwin, but sometimes scientific ideas, when misinterpreted, pseudoscience also can come up, and one of them was eugenics. There were, and unfortunately, some very reputable scientists supported this idea of eugenics, of good breeding. So we have to be aware of how science is interpreted. We have to fight for the pseudo-scientific interpretations of scientific ideas. That's our job. Look at, when you throw this light of our evolutionary origins, in our own society, we find some things which have to go away. If you accept the worldview, scientific worldview, the social construction of caste, the value system, the hierarchy of koi shreshth hai, koi kanisht hai, and somebody is untouchable. Think of that. What does evolutionary science teach us? That the whole life itself is connected, and whole human race is one race. There is one human community. We all at times have to go and bring blood from the blood bank. Do you know from where we have come? That blood comes from what caste, what religion? These very simple things. We think about the skin color, but evolution tells us that there is a chemical called melanin, which under the adaptive pressure, the selective pressure, can create the fairness of the skin or the darkness of the skin. So should we judge people on the color of their skin? We talk about the girl child. Evolution can explain in a much better way. that your progeny, male or female, it doesn't matter. 50% of the genes come from the dad and 50 from the mom. So this is very important, that in the light of science, we can revalue our assumptions, our value systems in our social life, our personal choices. I think they also can be judged through science, and this is a very important message, that we should have a scientific worldview. And ultimately, I will give a quote and stop. Just a minute. I can't resist. It's from Dawkins. All organisms that have ever lived, every animal and plant and bacteria and all fungi, every creeping thing and all who are present here, he said that who read the book can look back at their ancestors and make the following proud claim. Not a single one of our ancestors died in infancy. They all reached adulthood, and every single one was capable of finding at least one heterosexual partner and of successfully copulating. Not a single of our ancestors was felled by an enemy, or by a virus, or by a misjudged footstep on a cliff edge before bringing at least one child into the world. Thousands of our ancestors' contemporaries failed in all these respects, but not a single solitary one of our ancestors failed in any of them. What is this? We are so fortunate that we are the inheritors. We have a straight ancestry down to the first living being. So if we understand that who we are those survivors, and as survivors we have a great responsibility, and as one of the most populous animal in this world, we have the responsibility to save this earth. Thank you. Oh, thank you, sir. Yeah, I didn't get the Evolution, as I said, is not a thing. It's not an entity. It is an effect. Is gravity a thing? No. It's the same thing. As I said, there are three facts. What we can observe is replication. Is it not true that life forms multiply? Number two, is it not true that these life forms vary? There is slight variance at the molecular level and also in our appearance. Though we are born from the same mother and father, yes, there will be a likeness, but there is a variation. And the third fact also, which we have to study, is not everybody can pass his genes to the next generation in the same way. So the impact of these three, when